Good morning. You listen to the BLAINESWORLD show, heard each Wednesday here on the new WPVM in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVM.org and watch us on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, in my Zoom studio right here in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And to that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my friend, BJ Leiderman. Welcome aboard, BJ. And you can also,
Howdy
by the way,
doody.
you can wave to all your fans and friends in
Hi
Facebook
on
world.
my. Well, if I do that, wow, look at that.
Right,
I
exactly.
used to pay good money for this effect in college.
Special effects. Okay. And this is
Hi,
what we're going to
everybody.
do. We're just going to do this for the next half hour, BJ. We're just going to have you do special effects.
Okay,
BJ,
fine. I'm flying.
okay, BJ heads his own company, CEO of BJ Leiderman Music. BJ is perhaps best known, of course, for his work on coming up with the theme music on NPR. And he's done also about 47,000 other things in his lifetime. But BJ, the question I always ask when I first have a guest, and I don't think I've ever asked you this, but you've been a musician most of your adult life and most of your life. Would that be true?
Yeah, I started in earnest. When was my first band? I was in my 20s, I think.
Okay. But even long before then, as a kid, did you take, like, what did you start playing? What was your first instrument?
Well, my first memory was sitting on the carpet underneath our piano as my mother played. She was my influence. And then when I was able to, I started, just messing around on the piano myself. And when they figured out that I had some type of proficiency, she started sending me to a piano teacher. It was in high school. High school went from 7th grade up. That was really rough. And I had to walk to the piano teacher's house. It was about a mile, and I didn't dig that.
I know. Now, when you started playing then in high school, you were taking lessons. What was your first gig you ever had?
First gig I ever had, there was a mall nearby in our neighborhood, Pembroke Mall. And I don't know who got it, or maybe my mother turned me on to it, but a radio station they locked me up in the mall to play. We put a piano in the middle on the stage where the fountain, there was a fountain in the middle where they covered up the fountain. They put the piano there, and in conjunction with a local AM station, WTAR, I think, in Norfolk, it was for some cause. I forgot what the charity was, but BJ plays 24 hours with, bathroom breaks and phone call, with the station every now and then during the day. And nothing is scarier than playing in a mall. The only other person is a security guard who goes away because the mall is huge. And the music is playing. And it's 3 a.m. and use that, and I have to keep playing Beatles stuff.
Two questions.
Weird.
Did you get paid for that gig?
Yeah, I think I got a $50 thing and
a gift certificate.
A gift certificate to Orange Julius, and
one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But talk about that gig now. Here's an idea for you, BJ, and I want to do this as a fundraiser somewhere. Maybe we'll have Rebekkah, our guest, the second half hour, help us. But in that performance, when you were in the mall, did your mom take videos or pictures of that at all?
Yeah, there's a picture somewhere of me. I remember seeing it in that thing, and I think it was covered in a newspaper. So maybe there was. Oh, there are pictures of me in the newspaper that you do not want to see. I was not shy about. I mean, I had the performance bug early on, and I knew, well, you don't even want to know.
Okay, wait. My idea, BJ, but wouldn't it be cool if we got like at White Horse or some other place, everybody did their first performance, their first show, So and then
that's what I'm doing.
Oh.
That's what I'm doing.
You're still doing it.
Think I'm any better than I was when I was 10?
Yeah, but we don't have rec of it, so we'll have to do a rec of it.
Get off my lawn.
So you started playing as 10 in the mall. Very exciting. Do you remember your first band?
Yeah. Now the first real band was called SMEE, SMEE 2, Roman numeral 2. Bunch of some friends from high school. In fact, I remember after high school, I would go to the mall after school let out, and I would invade the piano store, Newton Piano Company, whatever. I would terrorize the owner because I would go to the biggest grand piano. I'd open the top, and I'd start playing and singing Beatles at the top of my lungs. He kicked me out a few times, but once the leader of this band, SMEE 2, SMEE, by the way, is Captain Hook's first mate in Peter Pan.
Oh, okay.
So Donnie Z, I'm playing Lady Madonna, and Donnie Z sidles up beside me on the bench, and he looks at me and goes, "You used to call me Felonious, Felonious Josephius. Felonious. I didn't know you could play like this." And he said, "You know any other stuff?" I just, did some Jackson Browne and some Cat Stevens. Anyway, in a couple of weeks, they had a band. Are you familiar with a restaurant chain called Jolly Ox and it's another name for it. It was one of those places where they brought the cart of steaks to your table.
Oh, okay.
And you picked the raw steak that you want, and they took it back and cooked it. Anyway, the SMEE 2 was the #1 act in this lounge, and there was a piano on the side, not on the stage, but on the side, because they didn't have a keyboard player. And Donnie said, "Come on in," and I was underage. I was 17 or 16, and the bass player, who was the leader, George, he said, he did an Elvis thing. He put the leather jacket on and slicked back his hair. He said, "One for the money." I said, "Yeah, I could do that. That's about a hound." So twice they invited me, not on stage. I didn't make it on stage, but on the side of the stage, and just basically banged the hell out of the piano. Stuck a mic down in it, opened the top, and just stuck a mic with the chords down in it and closed the top. And I went back to American University, and I got a call saying, "Would you like to join this band? We're going across country on tour."
This wasn't SMEE 2.
Sure.
This was another band?
This was SMEE 2. This was the same band.
So did they allow you then on stage?
Not only that, they bought me, at that time, Yamaha had come out with the very first electric baby grand that has strings and hammers. It came in two parts, so heavy that two people had to carry each part and then sort of snap together.
Wow.
It's the same piano that Billy Joel and Elton John played when they came out. Billy took it because it was a sure thing. Everything was. There were pickups, like guitar pickups, and you just plugged it in to the sound system, and finally the piano player could be heard.
Do you still have that?
No, I wish I did. No, I actually wish I didn't. Cause we found out it was impossible to keep the thing in great tune. Something about the physics of how long the bass notes were, because it was a very short piano.
Now, so you were still a relatively kid then. Did you drop out of school then to go cross country? You asked the best questions. I asked my parents if I could take a leave of absence. Right.
From American, and I can imagine. I heard later on. Plus, may they rest in peace. They said we had a big talk. Me and your dad, and we were hoping that we will say yes, hoping that you'll get it out of your system and come back to school. I never went back to college. So you were still. So you were. I'm a senior now.
Exactly, a senior in general. So you were a kid then. So then that was the first time you were performing with the band on a big time basis. Mm-hmm. And how long did that last?
I had joined them at the apex of their popularity, and little did I know that George told me that we're all one big happy family. We all love each other. It turned out there was some pretty bad fractions and frictions going on. We ended up, our last concert tour took us to Santa Barbara. And unbeknownst to most of the band, to everybody but George, the bass player, one night we were visited while we played by Jimmy Messina and, not Brian Wilson, but somebody from the Beach. Anyway, Messina had a studio, and it was impressed enough with our original material that he said, why don't you guys come to our studio, record your originals, and just give me first right of refusal to record them myself. We never heard about this. Our gig was over. We packed up the truck and the vans and the dogs and the CB radios and trucked it back to the East Coast. We didn't hear about this until later.
Now, you were just still a relatively young guy at that point in time. And then what happened with your musical career from that band forward?
I have no idea.
It was all blur.
I remember my mother hooking me up. I can tell you about my first jingle if you want to hear about that.
Oh yeah, shoot, go ahead.
That's a real hoot. In fact, I'm looking at the cassette. This is something for your audience. I was looking all over for this, and of course it won't let me.
There you go.
Well, there you go. If you can see
it's
that.
Got it. Yeah, good.
Okay, somewhere on there it says the original Morning Edition demo. That's from 1978.
Right.
And then it's got something called Nautilus. Nautilus was a health spot.
Sure.
That had they also sold those machines, the Nautilus machines.
I remember, yeah.
The seashell type thing. Anyway, my mother had a friend who was a singer who wanted to sing, and somehow they knew the owner of one of these franchises in Richmond, Virginia. That's when I went up to, it was called Alpha Audio, Candy Apple. It's now called In Your Ear Recording Studio. What a great name for a recording studio.
In your
ear. And this friend of my mother's, I wrote this crazy, idiotic, simple little jingle. But I was like a kid in a candy store because I play, keyboard and drums. So they had all that stuff set up. And they had some of the newest synthesizers, so I could play bass parts. Only 8 tracks, but I played piano, the electric piano, bass part, drum parts. And then at the end, the woman came in and sang her vocal. And on that basis, I, then had something on a cassette to take around to ad agencies to say, hey, this is my first thing. Do you have a client? I'll do something on spec for you. And that's how I started.
And so the first commercial was for Nautilus?
Nautilus Health Spa.
Okay. So, and that's another one. Do you still have that one?
That's on this tape, right?
Oh, it's on the tape.
I can't find a cassette. I can't find a working cassette player.
Well, it's like me too, BJ, that I can't do anything. I have my whole 8-track tape collection, Then I had to get rid of that. You laugh. Then I had to get
never get rid of it because the fidelity is kind of great.
You laugh, but then I had cassettes,
Yeah.
And then I had to buy a car that had a cassette player and CD player. And now CD players, I had to go find the CD player to listen to my CDs because nobody sells. Cars don't even have CD players anymore, So.
Right. I know. This is very crazy. It especially hurts when you do an album and you only press CDs. You don't put it on any streaming services.
Right. Well, talk a little bit about your CD. Now, the CD that you came out with, I guess, a year, 2 years ago, or about 2 years ago now. Was that your first CD you come out with?
That's my debut CD. It's called BJ, and it's my last CD.
Oh, why is it your last CD?
I'm not saying it's going to be the last bit of music I record.
Right.
But I don't want to encourage the behavior that the publishers and the record companies, the labels, are doing vis-a-vis the streaming service.
Right, yeah.
You know, I don't think the populace really understands how the musician's income has been gutted. Their recording income. People who sold CDs are now selling, you know, a lot less CDs. They can put their stuff on streaming services, but it's very easy to go see the current rates, how much, you know, what your check would be if you had 1 million streams, and it's just a few $100s, and it's I don't know where they're going to solve that. That's why I'm keeping my album off the streaming market, because if you want it, you have to buy it. Now I understand that's a catch-22 there, but it's what we call evergreen. It's got the Randall Bramlett Band as backup. It's got Bela Fleck on some. There's no synthesizer stuff to make it sound of an era. And I still have a chance, like I was saying before, to make this deal with Apple. And, you know, if I'm going to put the thing on a streaming service, I would rather it be Apple, because I was using Macintoshes to do music since the first one came out in 1984.
Well, I have to tell our listeners, though, the best part of the CD, you know, I love the songs, but my favorite part was listening to your mother.
Oh, yeah, that was...
Talk about that. I just love that.
Eric, I think that was mostly Eric Seraphin's idea. Mixer Man, we call him. He's a fabulous producer and mixer, and he moved to Asheville just when I was really being serious about doing the album. And when he heard, when my mother died, I dumped all her phone messages, you know, from my voicemail and the phone machine, you know, before regular voicemail. And I dumped them into my computer. And when he heard some of these, it's a Jewish mother, you know, worried about her son. Why don't you don't call me? Why don't you come over? And so we put that to a nice funky beat, and it's a scream. I mean, I'm gonna burn in hell. I know that. But
I have to tell you, it's my favorite part of that CD, and it's one of the things, BJ. Since you mentioned it, I'm going to give you a national audience, but an audience to share now your other idea you shared with me off the air about when you first run, when you when you first run for politics. I think you have a winning campaign, and you laugh. But folks, you have to listen to this, because BJ has one of the greatest ideas I've ever heard. Share it, BJ.
Okay, I'm even behind the times on this, because not many people really make it to recording a voicemail message. But you know, it's 2021, folks. There's not a person on earth, not even a child, that doesn't know what to do with the beat. Why are we waiting 20 seconds while the lady tells us we got to get rid of the voicemail, lady? That's what I'm gonna run for office. I'll do that. Make sure, you know, that AT&T and Verizon takes your message and then beep, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Michelle Obama.
But even you say that, BJ, even people still, and I think I'm guilty of it too, you know, rather than just say leave a message, beep, you know, they go into a 20-second thing, you know, and you know what's happening, you know.
But now look, this life is not for us anymore, Blaine. and I'm okay with that. I've gotten to be okay with it. So with the voicemail, you can bet that if you leave a voicemail, nobody's listening to our voicemail messages. Anyway, you know, they see that you called and they call you back. And then I go, did you hear the voicemail? No. So then I got to tell them all over again what I put on the voicemail.
Well, my mother, you talk about your mother. My mother always got upset with me, because for a while, BJ, my message was, you know, hey, you've reached the voicemail of Blaine Greenfield. I'm either away from the phone or under my desk, you know. And she said, what do you mean under your desk, you know? And but most people, like you said, didn't even listen. BJ,
I had a musical one, and I think I remember it. It was 4-part harmony and piano and drum, and it went, hello, it's BJ. I'm sorry we can't speak. Please leave your name and your telephone number when you hear the beep. Yeah, please leave your name and your telephone number when you hear the beep.
I love it, but you don't have it anymore. I haven't heard that.
It's on one of these cassettes somewhere.
On the cassette.
Somewhere, guarantee you, in a box.
BJ, let's sort of, we're going backwards and forwards, which is kind of cool. So you're in this band, you did the first, started doing some jingles. How'd you get into doing stuff for NPR?
Oh boy, talk about, planets aligning, the right time and me being in the right place. NPR was in 1977, 78, somewhere in there. They were trying out the idea for a new morning news show. And I'm sure they had a title yet. And they brought in a whole slew of print journalists to do it. And they did a couple or a few, as I understand it, pilot episodes, and they sent it to the member station. In those days, to send a show, they actually duplicated on 1/4-inch tape, big reel of tape, and those reels went into boxes, and those boxes went into, I don't know if FedEx was there then, but UPS or whatever, and they sent, and the word came back that, no, we hate the show, we're not going to use it. So they fired those guys. They moved some people over. Jim Russell was the initial producer of Morning Edition, and I guess they had an air date to make, and they realized that they didn't have a, theme music. Backstory: I had my jingle cassette demo of all my cool, I thought, and I gave it to my friend Skip Peasy, who happened to work. His girlfriend was Jerry Peasy, and they both worked at NPR. He was in the engineering department. Somehow, when he heard that they needed music, he slipped Jim Russell my demo cassette. And from what I hear from Skip, the story is that in his, cubicle mailbox, he got a memo from the desk of Jim Russell: "Get me BJ Leiderman, underlined exclamation point." So he fixed me up with a meeting with Jim, told me what they needed as far as what the music theme should sound like. And I went home and wrote it on my mother, the same piano that I learned, did piano lessons on and sat under when I was a kid. Morning Edition, ba 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 ba. That came out, instantly. And I did the demo at the guitar player in the band, Taco. He had a 4-track studio in his garage. I did the demo there, got the cassette back to Skip. He gave it to Jim Russell. Green light, they love it. And so we went to a big studio in Omega Studio in the DC area. I didn't know how to orchestrate at the time. I was doing everything on synthesizers. So I had some friends of mine, Dan Lett, who plays on the jazz version. And basically the players were writing, their parts out themselves as I was playing. Interesting story is that a short period of time before Morning Edition was to go on the air, Jim Russell left to start his own company. The Show Doctor is his company. It's a consulting company. He helps public radio programs, and he also started Marketplace. But before he did, he walked the tape over into the new producer Jay Kernis's office and said, "This is Leiderman's demo. We like it. Use it." And Jay said he pulled it out during one of his first creative meetings. And if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be talking right now, I don't think.
How many years did they use that?
Well, they used my Morning Edition thing. We went back into the studio every 5 years or so to freshen it up. When I say we, the second time around, it was not just me. They hooked me up with arranger, trumpet player, A-list studio session cat, Jim Pugh, who, by the way, for the past maybe 2 decades has been playing with Steely Dan. I mean, how great, how lucky am I? So, Jim would take my sketchy 4-track or 8-track demos, and just, he writes. I mean, he's a writer. And so whatever you hear of mine on NPR that's got orchestra, real players, that's Jim Pugh. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Was Jim.
Because you did a whole bunch of other stuff for NPR too, right?
Right. From there, let's see, after, there were a couple of shows between Morning Edition and Weekend Edition before Scott Simon started that came and went. I think one was called Electronical, but there was Weekend Edition, and then got a call to do a theme inside Car Talk called Stump the Chumps, where Click and Clack called somebody they gave advice to, a few episodes ago to see how it went. It's a very cartoony little theme. And the same producer asked me to do Marketplace and Wait, Don't Tell Me. And all that's still on the air. So Morning Edition, about a little over a year ago, they did a new arrangement using somebody else, but there was no way to get around not using the melody. So this new arrangement, you still hear the ba 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 ba. And they, when they called me up to tell me that it was going to change, they said, "You'll notice your melody is still there, and we're going to still give you a credit, on-air credit, but it's going to say," I see what they say. They say, "Yeah, our theme music was inspired by BJ Leiderman."
Question: in terms of your music stuff, you have a preference in terms of writing or performing?
That's a great question. Performing. I think it's performing, because when the moment is right, when the band is right, when the sound, the sound to us on stage is right, and when the groove is right, and when the audience is getting off on it, and when for me, when I'm singing, can hear myself well, I'm singing on pitch. When I first came to Asheville, doors opened for me wide. You put me on a pedestal. Bob Hinkle and Don over at White Horse, they opened it. They said, "Here's the stage. Whenever you want, whatever you want to do," And so I felt my band, we tore off some difficult pieces. Side 2 of Abbey Road, Picture Perfect, and some songs that are pretty hard to do. Now, since then, the Dirty Logic, Steely Dan band, and the band here that does the Moody Blues stuff, they just knock my socks off. But you can tell I have a predilection toward cover tunes. I just love to play hard cover tunes that are hard to play and play them well, play them right. Don't just kind of, and I get off on that.
Well, I'll give you a compliment, BJ, as we're winding down here, but that I've seen a bunch of your shows, and I can only hope that you come back and start doing lots of other shows in Asheville, because I miss it. Well, we all miss any shows, but your stuff is so good in this. You put on such good shows with Bob Hinkle at White Horse. They were fun. What?
How about New Year's Eve?
Yeah.
This New Year's Eve, this is coming December, White Horse, and the show will be Elton John, Billy Joel.
But I'm getting a chill because
I get a chill when I think of coming on with Funeral for a Friend.
But you just have to, you have to see BJ sometime live, because it's unlike any show you'll see. You're the best.
Can I plug my website?
Please,
it's what you would expect, bjleiderman.com, Leiderman. And on the website, you can click a button and buy the album. And
okay.
I'll even sign it for you if you want.
Okay, and I understand too, you just revamped the website, so it's all new.
Yeah, it's all brand new. It's got all the music videos, crazy music videos from the album. Actually, it tells you a little bit about my upcoming tour across the country for public radio member stations.
Well, I'd like to thank you, BJ, for being my guest this first half hour on the Blaine's World Show.
Thank you for asking me, Blaine. Thank you for everything you've done for me, my man.
Well, likewise. Well, hopefully we'll actually get to see each other sometime in the next couple of years in person.
I can't wait to give you a hug.
Okay, buddy. Hey, good seeing you.
Get that vaccine.
Okay, yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, buddy. See you soon. Okay, so as if we can do this via magic, we make BJ disappear. We'll see if we can do this, BJ. Some way I can do this somehow. And we're
I'm shrinking.
Okay, BJ's going
I'm
to.
shrinking.
Okay, see you, BJ. And as we bring in our second guest for the BLAINESWORLD show today, let me mention, I think she's coming in great. As Rebekkah works her way into the studio, let me mention that, wait, we're still with BJ. I didn't want to admit Rebekkah. And we'll take a look at BJ. Rebekkah.
Hello.
Rebekkah, I can see you. I can't see you yet. I'm trying to get rid of BJ.
Oh,
Okay. It's hard man to get rid of. Put it in
hi
waiting room.
BJ.
We'll
Bye
try it
BJ.
again. There you go. Okay. Hey,
Okay.
Rebekkah. Let me
Hey.
just mention before we speak to our second guest, WPVM's mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their views, voice on radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. You can do so by going to the website, WPVMFM.org, and looking at the donate option on the upper right-hand side. And with that announcement out of the way, I'd like to introduce my second guest, Rebekkah Hilgraves. And Rebekkah is the, I guess, owner of her own studio, RadHaus Studio.
RadHaus Studio.
I pronounced it correctly. Before we begin, Rebekkah, you can wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world.
Hello.
Okay. And I'd like to thank you for joining me. Rebekkah is a recording studio and audiophile house, RadHaus, her company, with both in-house and remote capabilities. They do great remote work for live performances. They can also record and mix on the fly at live venues. We'll talk about that in a second. And they can also broadcast live audio and video. And before we even talk about that business, you've been a performer before this, or are you still a performer?
Yes, although I've definitely changed tracks. I began back when I was just a wee little squirt singing with my father's band because he was a rock and roll musician back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So he let me very kindly sit in with him. And then I was introduced to opera, and it struck every melodramatic bone in my body. So I actually have a degree in opera performance and was an opera singer for about 35 years.
And it's so funny you say that because I love opera, and it's almost embarrassed to tell people that. But opera is so cool, you know.
Opera
I didn't know that about you.
It's the one complete art form, right? You get the sound,
right?
The sound of the singers. You get the sensation of the sound. You get all of the music. You get the visual effects of the lighting and the stage and the set and all of that stuff. And so and then the poetry and the storyline. And so it's all of these great art forms all rolled up into one grand package.
You know, you were actually an opera performer?
I was.
You did? Wow. Because, and so also not only to get that, you also learn foreign languages, I assume.
A little bit. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
I speak a little bit of Italian very badly. I speak a little bit more French, but still quite badly, and a little bit of German. I know about 10 words in Russian. 2 or 3 of them are quite bad.
And Spanish also? Any Spanish?
And of course, Spanish and Latin, a little bit of Czech, actually. High Church Slavonic.
Because opera performers amaze me, though. So when you learn, I mean, it's hard enough to learn a song in English, I guess, but to learn it in a foreign language, was that, I guess you must have a gift for that, or it was easy for you?
One learns tricks. Yes, I think I was gifted with an ear for language and the sound of the accents and that sort of thing. But I'll tell you what, translating it and learning it when you don't actually speak the language, which I didn't fluently, is its own challenge, because you have to learn the words, you have to learn the poetry, the rhythms, the importance of certain words. And in some of the languages, it's very different from what you think it would be, and very different from English. So, you know, like when you go to an opera now and you see the projected titles,
right,
and people laugh, it's often they're laughing at the English words, but the word in Italian is somewhere over there, right? So they're laughing in the wrong place. So we as performers had to learn to be ready for that laugh when the funny part is actually over there, or whatever. So learning it and then learning to make poetry out of it was actually one of the greatest challenges and one of the greatest rewards of doing it.
When you were learning it, did you translate it?
Of course.
As you were learning it?
Oh, yeah.
Because now I imagine too, it's so much easier with Google Translate, you know.
Mezzo mezzo. It's Google Translate is still quite bad.
Right, sure.
So typically what we do is, there are wonderful translated libretti for established operas, where we can go and just read the words and put everything together. But often what I would do is literal word for word translations with my dictionary over here and the score over here, and I'd write it out, because you want not only the literal word, the poetic translation to get the sense of the flow of it, but also you want the word for word translation, because I want to know that amore means love. And so placing that and giving it the right emphasis in the score is part of it too. So the translation is this huge exercise.
I can imagine, but I guess that helps learning also, though, as
Yes,
you're
very
translating,
much. Oh yeah.
learning it. Because what I do, Rebecca, when I translate something, I'll do English into Spanish and then I'll go back again. And like you said, it's rarely the same, and so you have to change it 17 times.
Yeah.
So go back to, though, your singing career, though, as it began. So with your dad, do you remember your first gig?
Well, it wasn't a gig so much as just he let me sit in with him. Now, this is a very funny story. He was singing in a club in Los Angeles. I was visiting him, and the song was "Even Though We Ain't Got Money." I'm so,
Sure, I know it.
I forget the name of the title of the song.
Right.
But so I sang that. I mispronounced Beta Chi because I didn't know what it was. And it was at a seedy little, really awful little joint in Hermosa Beach, California. And I got to text my father 35 years later to tell him that I had a gig at that same club.
Oh,
hey, Dad,
cool?
You'll never believe where I am. It was the same club.
Well, here's the idea, Rebecca. I want you to keep this in mind, and with your capabilities, we could do this. But I want to do a fundraiser, and for White Horse or any other venue, and everybody does their first gig. Like you talk about 35 years later.
Yeah.
Do you have any video? Or they didn't have video cameras then, but regular cameras. Do you have any? But wouldn't that be cool to, you could? Is your dad still around?
He passed away about 1.5 years ago.
But wouldn't that be cool, or to just be able to pass on? Here's your first performance. Yeah. So keep that in mind. I've shared it, I think, with Bob.
That's a neat idea.
I've shared it with Bob. Wouldn't that be fun for BJ Leiderman to come on? Everybody else do their very first song, 5 minutes. We'll do it as a fundraiser for White Horse,
right?
And tape it. But I just think that'd be a lot of fun to see it.
It would be fun. It would be fun.
Interesting background. So you did the opera thing. In between, were you playing in any other bands, or are you doing?
When I focused on opera, I was fully focused on opera. And that was one of the things that I had learned when I was a student was, in order to do it and do it well, it required a great deal of physical discipline. So I wasn't singing any other kind of music then, not even musicals. It was just entirely opera, just because it requires such focus and such discipline, and the chords have to be so carefully cared for. So that's all I was doing. I didn't get back into rock and roll until after I retired from opera.
Do you remember your first opera?
Let's see. Yeah, yes, it was Dialogues of the Carmelites by Francis Poulenc. And it was the first full-length opera I had performed, and it was actually while I was still in college. And I was the second prioress, Madeleine Lidouane, and it was in our little opera workshop studio. And it was, minimal costumes and minimal sets, but it was a beautiful production. And I was very fortunate that even though I went to a state school, the music program was outstanding. The opera program was outstanding. And so the singers were good. The production was beautiful. And it was a memorable experience.
Unfortunately, RadHaus wasn't around then, so we never recorded it.
Alas, no.
Oh.
I didn't get into recording this kind of stuff until quite a bit later. That's a long sort of circuitous route to get from there to here.
Okay, well, we're going to take you on in a second because I'm fascinated by it. Because again, I'm just thinking, wow, would I've loved to have seen that opera, and the shame of it, it's it's a one-time thing. And that's the amazing thing about opera too, that, shows you do 8 shows, a week, you do, whatever. Opera you do once, twice, it's amazing.
Yep, and then it's gone, just like that.
Exactly. So you then went from music with your dad, you did the opera for a bunch of years. Mm-hmm. What got you into then becoming a recording studio?
Well, this is interesting. Parallel with the performance career, I was also a radio broadcaster.
Oh, you too?
I
Okay.
started with the college radio station back when I was 19 years old. And that was neat because my music studies helped my ability to convey classical music well on the radio, and vice versa. I learned more about the music that I was studying by
Sure.
listening to the various symphonies and operas and whatnot through the radio. But then that turned into a professional career, and one of the things that I really, really enjoyed about it was not just being a board op and being on the air and doing this part of it, but also going out into the field and doing recordings and interviews and recording live shows. So I was a broadcast engineer, but on the classical side and pretty minimalistic, right? This is back in the
Right.
80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So we didn't have all the great digital equipment that we have now, and microphone placement was still an art form. And so I learned a lot of what I know now starting there, and then skipping way forward in Los Angeles now about 15 years ago, I was starting to get into the electronic music scene. And I don't know if you know who Steve Roach is. He's an ambient electronic musician. He's been around since just before I started broadcasting back in the 80s. And he's been doing it ever since. And he came to Los Angeles to perform. And I asked if I could broadcast his performance on the station that I was working for at the time. He gave me permission. I came and did the remote broadcast and interviews and a few of those things. And by that time, it had been a while since I'd been in radio, and I forgot how much I enjoyed doing field work. So that was the start of the studio. I realized how very much I enjoyed doing the live stuff, doing the broadcast, doing the interviews, the technical part of it, setting it up and getting the mix right and those sorts of things. And so that turned into a recording studio, small studio in Los Angeles. Series of unfortunate events there, a bad partnership, and so we had to fold and leave. But then when I came to North Carolina, I brought all my gear with me and ambitions to continue. And so then when Bob and I started working together, that was really sort of the full-blown launch of RadHaus. I've done a whole lot of stuff in between with audio engineering and that sort of thing, but this is really the full, like, both feet were in it. This is it.
And we should mention, when you talk about Bob, you talk about Bob Hinkle.
Bob Hinkle
at-
of White
at-
Horse Black Mountain. Yes.
And talk a little bit about that, because I didn't realize then you've only been here a relatively short period of time.
About 2.5, almost 3 years now.
Wow. So
Yeah.
it's just amazing. So you really got into it pretty quickly and pretty actively.
Yeah.
Talk about what you're doing at White Horse Black Mountain.
So 2.5 years ago, I met Bob for the first time because I was broadcasting an electronic music festival that was being hosted at White Horse. The end of the weekend, I felt like I was at home. I just, White Horse just felt so great to me, and I didn't want to leave. Bob and I had conversations. We got on really well. I wasn't living here yet at the time. I was down on the coast caring for my mother. And then I moved up here in February of now 2 years ago. And Bob and I started doing some stuff together. And when the plague hit, because I had all this gear and I was already set up here, I offered to turn everything into live remotes, going back to what I love to do, right? I love doing the live remote shows. So I offered to set up and do cameras and do the audio engineering, and let's broadcast artists and do what we can to help the venue and to help a few artists along the way, because, the pandemic hit and gigs just absolutely withered, just poof, gone. Musicians didn't have shows all of a sudden. Tours dried up. Venues were closed. And so this was the obvious thing to do. I had all the gear. Bob had the venue. Hey, hey kids, let's put on a show.
So Mickey and Judy,
Yeah, yes, sir, exactly.
But what's incredible, Rebekah, what you've done, and I think I've told you this maybe too many times, but I've seen, lots of shows, and I really support performers, especially now. I just love the shows, but I've never seen shows, quite the way you put them on, and let me just ask you the secret of that. In other words, a lot of people tape their shows and they're okay, but yours are damn close to spectacular, you
Well,
know.
thank you.
But talk
you.
about it. And even you were telling me off the air, you graduated from, originally you were doing, how many cameras when you started doing this?
When we started, I think we had 2 to
Right.
start with. And we started with 2 cheap little USB webcams to
Right.
begin with, and quickly realized that that just wasn't going to cut it. And so I started investing in better gear, better audio equipment, and better video equipment. And now we are up to 8 cameras.
And so not every show, but I guess most shows, you're having 8 cameras going on
Yes.
at one time?
Yep. 1 for Bob and the other 7 for the performers.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a second. But even the Bob thing, I love that little segment where he gets on and wants to do like a poem or something to begin everyone.
Yeah, he does a little ham bone.
Yeah.
And sings the theme song, which he wrote, and introduces the acts. And then at the end, we'll close up with a little bit of comedy. You know, we had a running thing for a while about what you find between the cushions of your couch if you look hard enough. And then that turned into just funny little rants about, like, if it's called a driveway, why do you park in it? And if it's called a parkway, why do you drive it? And those sorts of things.
But
yeah,
you know, to his credit and your credit, I love it though, because I don't know, when there's something called live theater, you know, there used to be something called live theater. I go to a lot of theater, and I'd see some people use pre-recorded announcements at the beginning. And I hate it, you know, because when I go to White Horse, to Bob's credit, the beauty of it, it's his personality, you know, and to your credit also, I've seen this, Rebekkah, that some people go much too long, you know, they take 5-6 minutes. Well, if the gets on, concludes, but I give you so much credit for putting them on, because it's, you know, it feels part of the show.
You asked me what the secret was. What's the magic?
Right.
And there are a few ingredients. Bob is absolutely one of them. You know, he's an industry. He's got a resume as long as my arm, and has been doing this for a very, very long time. So part of it is he has this experience, and he is a great storyteller. So he brings his own magic to it. And then part of it also is it's live. It's almost always live, not pre-taped. And even when it's in the rare occasions when we pre-tape them, we do them live. We don't cut up the segments. It's completely organic. It's, you know, you're on at 8:00 and you're not done until you're done. So there's this incredible electric feeling that happens in a live performance, even without an audience. Obviously an audience is better, but even without an audience, there's still that sense of the organic feel of it, the energy, the natural energy that happens when you're performing it live and you don't have do-overs. So that's part of the magic also. And then of course, you know, I have an amazing crew. So we're running 8 cameras, and one of them is always a roving camera. So we've got some motion happening, and she is just an amazing photographer and director of photography. We have a separate.
We'll give a shout out. Who is that?
Okay, so her name is Jessica Wharton, our director of photography. She has decades of experience as a photographer, and had started getting into cinematography. So naturally, I brought her on. And then we also have an audio engineer, our principal audio engineer, Claire Hogue, who graduated from UNCA in the music tech program. So she's our audio engineer, and she's terrific. Now, you'll notice something about this, and that is that my crew is entirely female.
I have noticed it, yes.
Yeah. And then my key grip, who is also basically interning into all of the jobs, is Jessica Fox, Jess Fox. And she's also going through UNCA's music tech program. And they're terrific. They're incredibly talented, very, very nice people to work with. And we have developed this synergy between us, and we work incredibly well as a team. So that's the other part of the magic, is my crew are great together, and we are always interested in helping the artist be as successful as possible, helping them look and sound as good as they possibly can. And we've reached a real pinnacle there, I think.
Well, again, compliment to not only you, to Bob as well, but I really enjoy seeing some of the shows that I don't ordinarily think I'd be interested in, you know. And the one, Franklin Keel, for example.
Yes.
Scott Keel, yeah.
Franklin Keel, yeah.
With the who's his piano player?
Oh, that was with Dan Weiser.
Right.
In music,
And
yeah.
I just love the show. I'm not as big a buff as you as classical music. I love opera, but that was really enjoyable to watch, but in part it was because it almost felt like I was there. I saw them up close. I've never seen that. You didn't go in the back like me. You didn't go in the back of the stage but that was really. It felt like I was there.
Delighted that you enjoyed that.
No,
one of the things that I'm sorry.
No, finish. Yeah, I'm sorry.
One of the things that we're trying to bring to people, especially during the pandemic, but even after it's over and we're able to get back to something like normal, is we want it to be even almost better than sitting there live with the good angles. You're talking about Dan Weiser, and he's such an amazing piano player. And so we do often what we call key cam, which is a camera focused on his fingers. So you can see all of the nuances of what he's playing. And that's kind of become one of our signature moves, right? Is anytime we have a pianist in, we'll do the key cam.
Well, not just the pianist. I love how it's like a fade in, so I'll be watching him and then you all of a sudden see Franklin and you'll see the two.
Right.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
The other thing, aside from BJ Leiderman, our first guest, I loved his show. But then you did another show, and just loved how you did it. It was the two Broadway performers. The
Sandy and Richard Riccardi.
Boy, did I love that show.
Aren't they fun?
But it was fun. But again, I don't know how you do it because you know what you're doing, but it really feels like I'm watching a live performance, and that really is, it's like I'm not a super big sports fan, but I like watching golf for the same kind of reason. It feels very intimate. Your stuff feels intimate.
That's exactly what thank you for saying that, because that's one of the things that we're after. We have ambitions for being picked up by a network, hopefully someday. And so what I've been doing is trying to model the look and feel of the show after some bigger network programs that I've really admired over the years. One of which would be the transatlantic sessions that are on from the BBC. They're beautifully filmed. The camera angles are gorgeous. The sound is always really beautiful. They're lit beautifully. So we're chasing some of these bigger shows and using them as our models and taking inspiration from some of these bigger programs. So when you say things like that, it makes me feel good because it means we're doing what we set out to do.
Well, whatever you're doing it well. Aside from that, I think you mentioned to me and that you also do recording for artists, right? You'll do their studio work as well.
Yep. One of the bonuses of being partnered with White Horse Black Mountain is that it is an acoustically unique space. It's an old Chevy dealership, as you heard. And
right.
One of the things that's really appealing about it is that it's not a rectangle. It's not a perfect rectangle. It's got this interesting angle to it. And the ceiling is arched and it's wood. So it sounds wonderful in there. Now, of course, we've got a fire station next door and stuff like that. So we have to contend with sirens every now and then. But it is an acoustically beautiful space. And it's really great for raw recording. Like, it's not the sort of polish that you can expect to get at something like Echo Mountain. What we bring instead is this wonderful, unique sound and this kind of old school, not unpolished, I would say, but definitely not the kind of absolute glossy corporate sheen that you get from a lot of other studios. So yes, we record artists both at White Horse and then also remote. Because again, one of my great loves is remote recording. We are actually mobile as well. So we have a van and all of our equipment is portable. So we can take all 48 channels and go record anywhere anywhere we can get within maybe 500 feet of a performing venue or somebody's mother's basement or Joshua Tree or something like that. We can do that as well.
Now, let me ask you, in terms of performers you've done recording for, I don't know, I'm trying to think, have I seen any opera yet? Or will we see any opera?
No, we haven't had any opera there. We've had an opera singer, Simone.
Oh yeah, the best. Yeah. I know who you're talking about. Oh yeah, that's right. She's been recorded her.
She sang with David Troy Francis.
I love that. Yeah,
wonderful program. So we've, and certainly we're capable of it. I actually stood up and sang Heaven Help Me for the Christmas celebration. And I'm performing there in a couple of months with Dan Weiser again. We're doing an all Barber program, Samuel Barber. So it doesn't happen very often, and we don't do full operas there, or not, at least not since I've been there. And of course, right now with the pandemic, we can only have so many people on the stage.
Do you like performing still?
I love performing. I don't miss opera though. What I miss about opera is the music itself, but I don't miss this is funny. I don't miss interacting with opera audiences so much. I had some interesting run-ins with people sort of late in my career, and I just lost patience with it. And it turns out that I'm an introvert. Now, you might find that funny
Right.
because I'm so talkative. I'm not shy, but I am an introvert. And so after performance, I wanted nothing more to do than just wrap up in my bathrobe with a book and not interact with people at all. So I don't miss the sort of obligatory shake hands with the public afterward part of it. What I do miss is the camaraderie, the feeling of family that you get when you work with an ensemble. But I have translated that into working with my awesome crew and working with the musicians at Whitehorse that come through. And then I've also started off into a different endeavor. I have a co-writer, and he and I are working on an album that's more sort of rock Americana kind of thing. And I'm getting back to my old roots, back when I sang with Daddy back in the day.
So now you're writing this, you'll also be performing it?
Yep.
Okay, we'll have to get you on the show too. Talk about that show when it's off the ground.
We're going to be releasing the album in late March. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm kind of making a mental note, but if you can remind me also, we'll do a show in February, or it's already coming up soon.
Well, the album drop is March 29th. So we'll be doing a lot of publicity in March, mid and late March.
Okay. Well, please involve me on that, because I'd love to do a show on it then.
Thank you.
We can play one or two songs or something if you want on that. Oh, very exciting. So in your spare time, this is what you're working on.
Yes.
If you had a choice, as we're winding down here, is there a type of performer you like, or do you have any favorite performers you like both taping for and working with? Is there any type of music?
Boy, that's an interesting question. It's like asking someone who their favorite child is. What we really enjoy when we do these shows is when we get the chance to highlight truly skilled musicians, and when we get to really bring forward the character of the instruments that they play. Joshua Messick is a great example.
Right.
We had a wonderful time recording his hammered dulcimer, and visually we loved it too. We got some good lighting on it, and it was fun. All of the musicians who've come through, we've had such a good time working with them. But in particular, we enjoy working with acts where we get to really love the sound of the instrument and love the sound of their voice, which means like close miking a guitar, for example, or close miking the piano. We have a particular array we use when we're miking the piano that really brings forward the character of the instrument. And it's not just like a live performance that happens to be broadcast. We want it to sound like a studio recording. And when we get to really love the instruments like that, I think we feel like we succeed.
If folks want to find out more about RadHaus Studio or you or your upcoming CD, a whole bunch of good stuff, what's the best bet?
Well, for the studio, the address is radhaus.studio. There's not a .com or anything. It's
and we should spell RadHaus is R-A-D?
R-A-D-H-A-U-S.
It's
a German word. And the reason we chose that was because of the mobile aspect. It's a German word that means that grotty gearbox of a bicycle. So RadHaus is the address, radhaus.studio. And then for the band stuff, if people are interested, it's Blind Phoenix, and the web address is blindphoenix.band.
Okay, I'd like to thank you, Rebekkah Hilgraves, for being my guest this second half hour on the BLAINESWORLD show. So exciting to finally get to at least speak to you almost in person. I'd like to thank BJ Leiderman, my guest the first half hour, Amy Prisnash, my producer. Look forward to having you join me next Wednesday at 9 a.m. here on WPVM in Asheville, North Carolina. You can listen online at WPVMFM.org and watch us on WPVM's Facebook page. Speak to you soon, Rebekkah. Thanks an awful lot.
Thanks so much, Blaine. I really appreciate your inviting me.